Good morning. I'm Amy Slaughter-Myers, one of the co-rectors here at St. Francis Episcopal Parish and Community Center. I'm standing on the campus of Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. This is the Homewood campus, the home of the liberal arts and sciences. And it is Johns Hopkins, the opportunity to study here and be formed by this illustrious institution that brought me to Baltimore many, many years ago. And so to be on the campus, I am reminded of incredible memories of learning and growth. And I'm also confronted with so much change. There's an area that when I was here used to be a forest, a small respite in the middle of campus, in the middle of Baltimore City. And that forest is gone. And a building was put up there, a beautiful building, but that forest was ripped up and a building was put there, and now I see that building itself is torn down again, and they are building something else. So in just 25 years, the dizzying changes that have happened to this campus. I was reminded of that and how formed I was by Johns Hopkins, and I think about the dizzying changes that have happened in my beloved and maybe your beloved Episcopal Church over the last 50 or so years. We recently, as leaders of St. Francis, got a letter, an anonymous letter, that was full of anguish, I would say, and anger and grief, naming through the lens of what St. Francis is doing, naming all of the changes that the Episcopal Church has gone through. And while this letter was directed toward me and toward other leaders at St. Francis, and in that sense was very hard to read and hard not to take personally, I also saw in that letter something I could really relate to, which is the grief and the anguish at the dizzying changes to a beloved institution. You know, when I was coming up in the Episcopal Church, and maybe when you were too, women couldn't be priests. Women couldn't be acolytes. Women couldn't serve on vestries. And here today in 2021, I'm talking to you in a collar as an ordained priest in this tradition. Our leadership is full of women at St. Francis. And so it doesn't surprise me that as humans, we look for people, specific people that we want to direct our rage and anger and anguish and grief toward. And so as a female clergy person, that I embody those changes because, as you know, for the majority of the Episcopal Church currently in the United States, at any rate, the majority of us are over the age of 65. So the majority of us didn't grow up with female priests. One of the most painful aspects about this anonymous letter is that it is anonymous, and there is no way that I can respond or that our leadership can respond to the pain that this person is externalizing to us, because I don't know who it is. I know that for me, when I think about the grief and the changes and the losses that have seemed only so much more accelerated in the pandemic, how I want someone to fix it. I want something to not change. I want my church or my school or my neighborhood or my family to not change. I want to be able to say, stop, I need some time to process. I can't handle all of these changes. And that's when I seek out others to be in community with, who I can unburden my own grief with and unburden my own grief to, and that we can be together in community, be present with one another as we process through that. A number of years ago, before I was ordained, I was serving a church on staff, and there were a dizzying amount of changes happening in that particular church. There was a transition in leadership. There was so much coming and going. And I remember one woman coming up to me and saying, I just need my church to stay the same. I just need my church to stay the same. And I was reminded of her when I read this anonymous letter who is the letter writer who is bemoaning the demographic changes of our country, for example, the church changes, not only the merger that happened here to become St. Francis, but as you likely know, there are dioceses that are discerning mergers, and in 2021, there are even Christian denominations that are discerning mergers. So what does that mean for God? What does that mean for us? Scripture is a record of God's people struggling with the tension between following a living God and also attachments to the way things have always been. I take great heart in that, and I hope that you do too, because this has always been the case for people, an itinerant people of God on the go. Good morning.